She only had $2 in her pocket, yet she walked into her blind date full of hope. But instead of love, she faced cruel humiliation until an unexpected stranger stepped in. What happened next will leave you stunned, and maybe even restore your faith in humanity. Welcome to BrainFuel, the place where real-life inspired stories spark emotion, teach lessons, and fuel your mind. If you believe in kindness, resilience, and the power of a good story, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and let's dive into today's unforgettable story. $2. That's all she had left. The words echoed in Tasha's mind as she sat on the edge of her small bed, staring at the 2 crumpled bills in her hand. To anyone else, it might have looked like nothing. For Tasha, it represented both a harsh reality and a reminder of how far she had fallen behind. Her life hadn't always been this way. She was once a bright, ambitious student with big dreams of finishing college, landing a stable job, and eventually giving her mother the life she deserved. But reality struck harder than she expected. Her mother had fallen ill, requiring expensive medication that insurance barely covered. Bills piled up month after month. Rent, utilities, and medical costs drained nearly every paycheck from her part-time job at a grocery store. Despite all her effort, she was left with very little, sometimes nothing at all. That night, as she looked at the $2, she thought about how many sacrifices she had made just to get by. She skipped meals so her mother could eat. She patched up old clothes instead of buying new ones. She walked long distances to save bus fare. And yet, here she was, broke, tired, and unsure what tomorrow would bring. Her best friend, Alicia, noticed how heavy life had become for Tasha. She wanted to cheer her up, to remind her that even though money was tight, life didn't always have to feel so dark. That's when she suggested something unusual, a blind date. At first, Tasha laughed. A date? With what money? I can't even buy a cup of coffee, let alone sit through dinner. But Alicia wouldn't let it go. Tasha, listen to me. Not every man is looking at what's in your wallet. Some people just want to meet someone real. And you, my friend, are as real as it gets. You deserve a night where you can think about something other than bills and responsibilities. Tasha hesitated. The idea sounded absurd. She didn't have the right clothes. She didn't have the right money. And she definitely didn't feel like she belonged in any fancy restaurant. Yet, deep down, she wanted to believe Alicia was right. Maybe, just maybe, this blind date could give her something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. After days of convincing, she finally agreed. Alicia gave her the details. The man's name was Marcus. He had been introduced through a mutual acquaintance, and he suggested dinner at a popular Italian restaurant downtown. Tasha's heart sank when she heard Italian restaurant. She immediately pictured expensive pasta dishes, fancy wine, and bills she couldn't even dream of paying. Still, Alicia encouraged her. Don't overthink it. Just go, be yourself, and see what happens. You've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. You deserve one night where you feel normal, where you smile, where you have a story to tell besides all the struggles. So, Tasha pulled out her best thrift store dress. It wasn't designer, but it was clean, simple, and flattering. She straightened her hair the best she could with the old flat iron that sometimes sparked, and she borrowed a pair of earrings from Alicia to complete the look. When she stood in front of the mirror, she whispered to herself, "You don't need money to have dignity. You don't need riches to deserve respect." But even with that pep talk, the $2 still haunted her. It was just enough to cover the bus fare home, not a dime more. If anything went wrong, if she was expected to pay even part of the bill, she had no backup plan. That fear made her stomach twist with knots. As the sun set, she left her small apartment and boarded the bus. The ride was quiet, giving her too much time to think. Questions raced through her mind. What if he noticed her clothes weren't expensive? What if he asked what she did for a living? What if the conversation turned to money? She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to feel embarrassed. At one point, she almost pulled the stop cord and turned back. But then she remembered her mother's words, spoken years ago when life wasn't so hard. Tasha, no matter how tough things get, you can't let fear decide your future. You have to step into the unknown, because sometimes the unknown holds your blessing. By the time the bus pulled into downtown, Tasha had convinced herself to at least try. The city lights glowed, people filled the sidewalks, and restaurants buzzed with energy. She spotted the Italian place Marcus had chosen, its windows warm with golden light. Taking a deep breath, she walked inside. The scent of garlic and fresh bread filled the air, instantly making her realize how hungry she was. Couples and families filled the tables, laughing and enjoying themselves. For a brief second, she imagined she belonged there, that she was just another woman out for dinner on a Friday night. Marcus was already at a table near the back. He looked sharp in a tailored suit, his hair neatly styled, and his phone in hand. Tasha felt a mix of relief and nervousness as she walked toward him. This was it. The blind date her friend had pushed her into, the night that might either break her completely or remind her she was more than her struggles. She sat down, forcing a polite smile. Marcus glanced up briefly, then returned his eyes to his phone. The date had begun, but little did Tasha know, it would not go the way she imagined. The Italian restaurant glowed with soft golden lights that reflected against polished wine glasses and neatly folded napkins. The smell of garlic bread baking in the oven filled the air, and every table seemed to hum with chatter and laughter. To most, it was a place of comfort and indulgence. But to Tasha, walking into that world felt like stepping into a spotlight she wasn't ready for. Marcus was already seated at a small table tucked toward the back. From the moment she saw him, Tasha noticed a sharp suit, the expensive watch glinting on his wrist, and the air of confidence that seemed to radiate from him. For a brief second, she thought, maybe this won't be so bad. Maybe he'll be kind, and this night will be worth the nerves. She walked over, clutching her purse tightly. Marcus looked up, gave her a quick once-over, and then immediately returned his gaze to the glowing screen of his phone. No smile, no greeting, just a brief acknowledgement, as though she was a business appointment arriving late. "Hi, Marcus." Tasha asked softly. "Yeah," he replied, his tone flat. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Go ahead, sit." She slid into the chair, smoothing down her thrift store dress as she tried to ignore the pit forming in her stomach. She reminded herself of Alicia's words. Just be yourself. You deserve this night. After a moment of silence, Marcus finally set his phone aside. "So," he said, leaning back casually, "what do you do?" Tasha brightened slightly, happy to share something. "I'm working part-time at a grocery store while finishing my degree in nursing. It's been tough, but I'm trying to stay focused." Before she could finish, Marcus smirked. "So, basically broke." The words cut through her like a knife. She laughed nervously, hoping he was joking, but the look on his face told her otherwise. He meant it. Still, Tasha tried to keep the conversation alive. "Well, nursing is something I've always been passionate about. It's not just about the paycheck. It's about helping people, making a difference." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Yeah, that's noble and all. But honestly, in today's world, it's about how much money you can stack. I can't imagine living on some part-time wage." Tasha pressed her lips together, the knot in her stomach tightening. She wanted to defend herself, but something about his arrogance made her shrink into her chair. Instead, she forced a polite smile and said, "I guess we all measure success differently." The waiter arrived with menus, interrupting the uncomfortable moment. Marcus didn't even say thank you. He simply opened the menu and scanned the options with a critical eye. "I'll have the ribeye steak, medium rare," he said confidently, "and a glass of your best red wine." The waiter turned to Tasha. She hesitated, her eyes flicking nervously to the prices on the menu. Everything looked so expensive, far beyond what she could ever afford. Her hands trembled slightly as she searched for the cheapest item. "I'll just have a spaghetti marinara," she said softly, closing the menu quickly. The waiter nodded and left. Tasha felt Marcus's eyes on her. "That's all you're getting? Just spaghetti?" She gave a small smile. "I'm not a big eater." He chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. "Figures." As the minutes passed, Marcus filled the silence with stories, except they weren't stories so much as monologues. He bragged about the luxury car he drove, the vacation he recently took to Miami, the women who supposedly chased after him. He even pulled out his phone to show her photos of himself at parties, standing next to expensive bottles of champagne. "See, this is the kind of lifestyle I live," he said proudly. "High standards, high rewards. I don't waste time with people who can't keep up." Tasha nodded politely, though inside she felt smaller and smaller with each word. It wasn't the fact that he had money. She respected people who work hard and earn success. It was the way he used it like a weapon, a measuring stick to judge everyone else. She sipped a glass of water in front of her, trying to steady herself, trying not to let him see the storm building inside her. At one point, she asked, "So what made you agree to a blind date?" Marcus shrugged. "Honestly, I get bored. My friend said I should meet someone down to earth. Thought I'd give a shot." He smirked. Didn't think down to earth. Meant down to her last dollar, though. The words were cruel, and though he said them casually, they hit Tasha like a slap across the face. She fought back tears, staring down at the tablecloth, tracing the patterns with her finger just to distract herself. The food eventually arrived. Marcus's steak was thick and juicy, paired with a glass of wine that caught the light beautifully. Tasha's spaghetti looked plain in comparison, but she was too hungry to care. She twirled the noodles quietly, eating slowly, while Marcus devoured his steak and continued bragging about his achievements. Every so often he checked his phone, laughing at texts, scrolling through notifications, barely making eye contact with her. It was clear that this wasn't a date for him. It was an ego exercise, a performance to remind himself how superior he was. Tasha thought about leaving more than once. She imagined standing up, walking out the door, and never looking back. But then reality hit her. She had no money to pay even for her meal, no way to cover the bus ride back, and she gave away the last $2 in her purse. She was trapped, forced to sit through his arrogance, waiting for the night to end. Still, she tried one last time to steer the conversation somewhere meaningful. "Do you ever think about family? About building something that lasts, beyond the cars and vacations?" Marcus chewed a piece of steak, then shrugged. "Family's overrated. Women come and go. At the end of the day, it's about power, respect, and how much money you got in the bank. That's what people remember." Tasha stared at him, her chest tightening with disappointment. She realized in that moment that this blind date wasn't just a mismatch. It was a lesson. Sometimes you meet people who reveal the exact opposite of what you want in life. And yet, the worst moment hadn't even arrived. The bill was still on its way. Dinner dragged on like an endless performance that Tasha never asked to be part of. She sat quietly, her fork pushing strands of spaghetti across the plate as Marcus continued to boast about his successes. She tried to nod in the right places, tried to smile when he expected her to, but inside she felt like a balloon slowly deflating. Every word he spoke seemed designed to make her feel smaller. Finally, after what felt like hours, the waiter returned with a check tucked neatly inside a small black folder. The moment that Tasha had been dreading all evening had arrived. The waiter placed the folder gently in the middle of the table. For a second, time froze. Tasha prayed Marcus would do the natural thing, pick it up, glance at it, and cover the bill. He was the one who suggested the restaurant. After all, he was the one who ordered the steak and wine. Surely, he wouldn't expect her, a broke college student, to handle it. But Marcus didn't reach for it. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and smirked. Then, with a casual flick of his fingers, he nudged the folder toward her. "There you go," he said smoothly. "Ladies first." Tasha blinked, caught off guard. She let out a nervous laugh, thinking maybe he was joking. "Oh, no, I—" Marcus interrupted. "You invited me here, remember? Isn't that how it works? Whoever does the inviting handles a check." Her heart sank. "But—" I didn't, she started, but he cut her off again. "Come on, don't act like you don't know the rules. Besides, I ordered light because I thought you'd be covering it." Tasha's face flushed hot with embarrassment. She glanced around the restaurant, suddenly aware of the people sitting nearby. Some were sneaking glances at her, others pretending not to notice but clearly listening. The heat of humiliation climbed up her neck until she felt like her skin was on fire. With trembling fingers, She opened her purse. Inside was the same sad sight she had seen earlier that evening. 2 wrinkled dollar bills. That was it. Not enough to cover the spaghetti. Not enough to cover a tip. Not enough for anything except the bus ride home. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I only have $2. Marcus leaned forward, his smirk widening into a cruel grin. $2? You came on a date with $2? Wow. He laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that carried across the restaurant. Heads turned. People began to whisper. Tasha wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and escape the eyes of strangers watching her humiliation unfold. She fumbled with her purse, hoping maybe she had overlooked a hidden bill or a few coins. Nothing, just the 2 crumpled dollars that mocked her with their uselessness. The waiter, caught in the middle, shifted uncomfortably. He cleared his throat, trying to remain professional, but the awkwardness hung thick in the air. "Would you like me to split the bill?" he asked gently. Before Tasha could answer, Marcus scoffed loudly. "Split the bill? With what? She can't even afford a bus ticket, let alone dinner." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, clearly enjoying himself. A few people at nearby tables gasped softly. One woman shook her head in disgust. Another man muttered something under his breath about no manners. But Marcus didn't care. To him, this was entertainment, a chance to show off his superiority at the expense of a woman who had done nothing but try. Tasha felt tears welling in her eyes. She bit her lip, refusing to let them fall, but the lump in her throat made it impossible to speak. All she could think was how stupid she felt for agreeing to this date, for letting her friend convince her she deserved one night of normalcy. The more Marcus smirked, the more she wanted to vanish. She imagined standing up and running out of the restaurant, but even that wasn't an option. The bus ride home depended on those $2. If she gave them away now, she'd have no way to get back to her mother, who was probably waiting for her. The silence stretched painfully, broken only by Marcus's chuckle as he pulled out his phone. "I should post this," he muttered. "Blind date with a girl who's broke? My followers would love it." That was it, the final straw. The tears she had fought so hard to hold back threatened to spill. She lowered her head, her hands trembling over her purse, wishing she could rewind the entire night. And then, just when humiliation seemed unbearable, another voice cut through the tension. "I'll take care of it." The words were steady, deep, and calm. They didn't come from Marcus or the waiter, or even Tasha. They came from the table next to them. Tasha froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward the voice. There, seated at a small table with a little girl beside him, was a man in a simple button-down shirt. His presence was quiet yet commanding, his expression calm but firm. He looked at the waiter and repeated, "Put their bill on mine." For a moment, the restaurant seemed to go silent. The waiter blinked in surprise, then nodded gratefully. Marcus, on the other hand, looked furious. "Excuse me? Who asked you to get involved?" he snapped. The man didn't flinch. His gaze shifted to Marcus, steady and unbothered. "No one," he said simply. "But I can't sit here and watch a grown man humiliate someone over a meal." Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. A few people even clapped quietly under their breath. Tasha, stunned and speechless, could only stare at the stranger who had stepped in when she needed it most. Marcus rolled his eyes and muttered something about heroes and charity cases, but his arrogance suddenly looked small compared to the quiet strength of the man standing just a few feet away. For the first time that night, Tasha felt something other than shame. She felt seen, protected, and though she didn't know it yet, this moment was about to change her life forever. The restaurant, once filled with cheerful chatter, had shifted into a heavy silence. All eyes seemed to be on Tasha and Marcus. Some patrons whispered to each other. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But Tasha barely noticed any of them. Her ears rang with Marcus's laughter, her cheeks burned with shame, and her chest ached from holding back tears. And then came that voice. "I'll take care of it." The calm, steady words sliced through the tension like a beam of light cutting through a storm. They came from the table just a few feet away. Tasha turned slowly, unsure she had imagined it. But no, there he was, a tall man, dressed simply in a button-down shirt and dark jeans, sitting with an air of quiet authority. His presence wasn't loud or flashy, yet something about him commanded attention. He had warm, steady eyes and a calm strength that seemed to anchor the entire room. Beside him sat a little girl, no older than 6, with curly hair tied into 2 playful puffs. She was coloring on a kid's menu with a red crayon, oblivious to the drama swirling around her father. The man handed his credit card to the waiter. "Put their meals on my tab," he repeated, his tone firm yet kind. For Tasha, it felt like a lifeline thrown into raging waters. Relief washed over her, so sudden it nearly broke her, but alongside it came confusion. Why would a complete stranger step in for me? Why me? Marcus, however, was far from grateful. He pushed back his chair with a loud screech and glared at the man. "Excuse me? Who asked you to get involved?" His voice dripped with indignation, as though the stranger had dared to insult his pride. The man didn't even flinch. He looked at Marcus evenly, his tone calm and unshaken. "No one asked, but I can't sit here and watch a man humiliate a woman over dinner. That's not how decent people behave." The words hit like a slap, not at Tasha, but at Marcus. A murmur of approval spread through the restaurant. One couple even gave a small clap before quickly quieting down. Marcus's face twisted in irritation. "You don't even know her. Why waste your money? She's just some broke girl trying to get a free meal." The stranger's expression hardened ever so slightly. He leaned forward just enough to make Marcus realize he wasn't someone to push. "And you're just a man who forgot what respect looks like. Money doesn't make you better than anyone else. Character does." The words landed with the weight of truth. Marcus opened his mouth to reply, but found no clever comeback. He scoffed instead, muttering under his breath, "Whatever. This is pathetic." Grabbing his phone, he shoved it into his pocket and stormed out of the restaurant, his arrogance trailing behind him like a sour odor. The tension dissolved with his departure, leaving behind an almost palpable sense of relief. A few patrons whispered words of approval. "Good riddance, unbelievable guy," and then returned to their meals. Tasha sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Moments ago, she was drowning in humiliation. Now, a complete stranger had stepped in, rescued her dignity, and silenced a man who had tried to belittle her. The stranger turned to her now, his eyes softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She nodded quickly, blinking back tears that threatened to spill. I don't even know what to say. Thank you." The man gave a small smile. "You don't have to thank me. Nobody should have to go through that." His little girl looked up from her coloring and waved shyly at Tasha. "Hi," she said in a sweet, innocent voice. Despite everything, Tasha felt her lips curve into the first genuine smile of the night. "Hi," she whispered back, waving softly. The man introduced himself. "I'm David, and this is my daughter, Maya." Tasha tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, still struggling to steady her voice. "I'm Tasha. It's really nice to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances." David chuckled lightly. Sometimes the worst circumstances bring out the best moments. Don't let that man's words get to you. He doesn't define you. Something in his tone struck her, gentle yet firm, like he wasn't just offering comfort, but stating a fact. It was the first time all evening that Tasha felt seen not as a broke girl, but as a person with worth beyond money. The waiter returned with the receipt for David to sign. He handled it without hesitation, slipping the folder back as if paying for 2 extra meals was nothing at all. But to Tasha, it was everything. It wasn't just the money. It was the kindness, the rescue, the way he restored her dignity when she thought it was gone forever. After signing, David looked at her again. "Would you like to join us for dessert?" Maya and I were about to order something sweet. Tasha hesitated. Part of her wanted to decline, not wanting to impose further. But the look in Maya's big, hopeful eyes made her heart soften. "Only if you're sure," she said timidly. "Of course," David replied. "It'd be our pleasure." And so, for the first time that night, Tasha relaxed. She joined their table. Sitting across from Maya, who proudly showed her the half-finished drawing of a house with a bright red roof. David ordered a slice of cheesecake for the table to share. As they talked, Tasha discovered that David wasn't just kind. He was genuine. He didn't ask invasive questions about her struggles or judge her situation. Instead, he asked about her dreams, her studies, what she loved to do when life wasn't so heavy. He listened, really listened, in a way Marcus never had. Maya chimed in often, telling silly stories about school, making both her father and Tasha laugh. The heaviness that sat in Tasha's chest all evening slowly began to lift. For once, she wasn't thinking about the $2 in her purse, or the humiliation Marcus caused, or the endless bills waiting at home. For once, she felt like she belonged at that table, laughing over cheesecake with a kind man and his sweet daughter. By the end of the night, as they prepared to leave, David offered her a final reassurance. Remember, what happened tonight doesn't define you. Don't carry his cruelty with you. Carry the reminder that you're worth far more than he ever realized. Tasha nodded, her throat tightening with gratitude. In a single evening, a stranger had stepped in, not just to pay for her meal, but to restore something she thought she had lost forever, her sense of worth. The night air was cool when they stepped outside the restaurant. The city lights shimmered on wet pavement, reflecting neon signs and headlights that passed by in a steady stream. Tasha hugged her purse close to her chest, still processing everything that had happened. The humiliation, the laughter, the tears she had fought so hard to hide. And then, the rescue. David walked beside her, his daughter's small hand tucked safely in his own. Maya skipped a little, as though she hadn't noticed the tension that had filled the restaurant earlier. To her, the night was simply an adventure. Dinner with her dad and a new friend. "Do you live nearby?" David asked gently, not prying, just checking in. Tasha nodded. "A couple of bus stops away." She hesitated, embarrassed to admit even that. He studied her for a moment, then offered a reassuring smile. "I'll walk you to the stop. Safer that way." As they walked, Maya chattered about her favorite cartoons, her favorite ice cream flavors, and how she wanted to be a doctor like Tasha when she grew up. That simple, innocent admiration made Tasha's heart swell. Nobody had ever looked at her struggles and seen inspiration until now. When they reached the bus stop, Tasha turned to them, her heart heavy with gratitude she couldn't quite put into words. "David, I don't know how to thank you. You didn't just save me from embarrassment tonight. You gave me something I didn't realize I'd lost." He tilted his head. "And what's that?" "Hope," she whispered. Her voice cracked as she said it. David's expression softened, and for a long moment he just looked at her, as though trying to measure the weight of her words. Finally, he said, "You don't owe me thanks, Tasha. If anything, I should be thanking you. People like you remind me why it's important to stay grounded. Money can buy dinner, but it can't buy kindness. You already carry that." Those words sank into her heart deeper than any compliment she'd ever received. The bus approached with a low rumble. Its headlights cut through the night, and the brakes squealed as it came to a stop. Tasha turned to David and Maya one last time. "I'll never forget this. Either of you." Maya smiled brightly, her little hand waving eagerly. "Bye, Tasha. Don't be sad anymore, okay?" Tasha smiled through the tears that threatened to spill. "Okay, I'll try." She boarded the bus, found a seat near the window, and watched as David and Maya waved from the sidewalk until the bus pulled away. For the rest of the ride, her mind replayed the night again and again, the cruelty of Marcus, the humiliation, the way her stomach had twisted with fear, and then the sudden shift the moment David spoke up, the way he stood tall without arrogance, the way he shielded her dignity without hesitation. By the time she stepped off the bus, Tasha realized something important. That night hadn't broken her. It had rebuilt her. The days that followed felt different. At work, she noticed herself smiling more, greeting customers with genuine warmth. At school, when assignments piled up, she didn't let the pressure overwhelm her as easily. The memory of David's words, "Money doesn't make you better than anyone else. Character does," echoed in her mind like a mantra. And then, one evening, something unexpected happened. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Alicia. "Hey, Remember that guy from the restaurant? The one who helped you? You won't believe this. He's actually the CEO of a tech company in the city. A big deal. I just found out from a mutual connection. Tasha blinked at the screen, stunned. David? A CEO? She thought about his calm demeanor, the way he dressed simply, the way he treated everyone with kindness. Never once had he bragged. Never once had he mentioned his success. Marcus flaunted every dime he made, but David, a man who clearly had more, never needed to prove it. That was the difference. Her chest tightened with admiration. She realized that what had impressed her most wasn't his status, but the fact that he carried it with humility. A week later, fate brought them together again. She was leaving her shift at the grocery store when she spotted a familiar figure near the entrance. David, with Maya perched on his shoulders, was shopping for groceries. Their eyes met, and his face lit up with recognition. Tasha, Maya squealed, waving excitedly. It's you. Tasha laughed, her heart fluttering as she approached. I didn't expect to see you here. David shrugged, smiling. We all have to eat. Even so's. Her eyes widened. So it's true. He raised an eyebrow. What's true? That you're, the CEO of a tech company? He chuckled softly. I suppose word gets around. But that doesn't really matter, does it? I'm still just David. And that right there was the moment Tasha realized what set him apart from Marcus, from so many others she had met. David's worth wasn't in his wallet. It was in his heart. Over time, their paths crossed more often. A coffee here, a shared laugh there. Maya adored her, and David valued her honesty, her resilience, her refusal to let life's struggles define her spirit. Slowly but surely, something began to bloom between them, not forced, not rushed, but steady, genuine, and filled with respect. Looking back on that night in the restaurant, Tasha understood that life had handed her something more precious than money, more lasting than a free meal. She had found someone who reminded her of her own value, someone who proved that kindness still existed in a world that often felt cold. And so, the girl who walked into a restaurant with only $2 in her purse walked away with something far richer, a new beginning. Because sometimes when the world tries to break you, fate sends someone to pick up not just a tab, but also the pieces of your heart.